Peter Pettigrew. He is a character that has an interesting story. He started out being a member of the Marauders, then a member of the Order of the Phoenix, then spent over a decade as a rat, and then served as one of Voldemort's Death Eaters. Welcome to Movie Flame. I'm Morgan Ross, and today I'm going to go over the entire life of Peter Pettigrew, otherwise known as Wormtail. This channel took off with my Harry Potter Life Of videos back in the day, and I haven't made one in a while, so I decided it was time to bring it back. Wormtail is a character that deserves a closer look, because the movies did him pretty dirty, leaving out huge portions of his story, and not even wrapping his character arc up in the correct way, or really at all. Make sure you stay until the end because I'm going to break down the ending of his tale in detail and give my own thoughts on his overall character that I think every Harry Potter fan will find interesting. Now just to be clear, I'm only going over canon detail from the books and official extended lore. I'm not covering anything from the movies, and I'm certainly not covering anything from the video games like Hogwarts Mystery. Hogwarts Mystery actually added to his story in one of the weirdest ways that's so bad. But it's not canon, so it doesn't matter for this video. If you enjoy this video, please consider liking and sharing. It will greatly help to grow and sustain the channel. And if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media pages, all of which are linked down below, and all of which house similar content that I make here on this channel. Now, let's get into it. Peter Pettigrew was born around 1959 or 1960 to a witch mother and a father whose blood status remains unknown, meaning he could be a pureblood, but also could be a half-blood. Peter is actually the only one out of the 4 Marauder boys without any backstory before Hogwarts at all, which I honestly found surprising. Peter was described to be a small plump boy with mousy hair and a pointed nose. He obviously was not the best looking guy in the lot. When Peter was 11, he got his Hogwarts letter inviting him to the school. This meant that at some point during his childhood, Pettigrew used magic in some way, most likely by accident. Something similar to how Harry made the glass at the zoo disappear. Peter using magic in this way made 2 magical artifacts deep in Hogwarts Castle. The Quill of Acceptance and the Book of Admittance agreed that he showed enough magic that he was teachable, and they wrote his name down, cementing his place in the wizard school. In 1971, Peter began his first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Right away, he met Remus Lupin. Remus was kind to him, even though he saw Pettigrew as a short and rather slow boy. Remus befriended him, and when he later became friends with 2 other boys named James Potter and Sirius Black, they welcomed Peter when, had it not been for Remus's persuasion, they probably would not have thought him worthy of their attention. If you try to find a doctor of your own, you'll find that there are many doctors that aren't worthy of your attention. But today's video sponsor ZocDoc can ensure you easily find someone that is worthy of your attention and who can give you a great experience. ZocDoc, it's a free website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. And ZocDoc isn't just for one type of care. They have more than 100,000 providers across nearly every specialty, from primary care to dental health, eye care to urgent care to mental health, and more. It's your one-stop shop for all of your healthcare needs. No need to call doctor's offices and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online. I actually just had an emergency of my own where I scratched my cornea. Well, actually, my 6-month-old baby scratched it. Shout out to Wesley. I literally just moved like a month ago, so I didn't know the area very well, and no longer had access to my old doctors. So I called around, and all of them had a super long wait list, like a month or more. Meanwhile, I'm just rocking with one eye, trying to work, take care of a baby, and just live life in general. Then I turned to ZocDoc, and they came through, because it helped me get an appointment that same day. And thank God, because I was struggling. Now that I've been introduced to ZocDoc, I'm never scheduling an appointment without it. Not only did it find me a doctor that got me in quickly, but it gave me a doctor that gave me a wonderful experience. When you found the doctor you need, you can see their actual appointment openings. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. And you can even score same-day appointments, just like I did. Stop waiting and start getting the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/movieflame to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/movieflame and instantly find and book a top-rated doctor who feels right for you. Seriously, it's that easy. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to it. At the sorting ceremony, when Peter put the sorting hat on, something very rare happened. The hat deliberated on what house to put in for over 5 minutes, which if this happens, it is defined as a hat stall. A hat stall is when the Sorting Hat sees a student with a personality that equally suits 2 different houses at Hogwarts, which for Peter was of course Gryffindor and Slytherin. Ultimately, the hat decided he was better suited for Gryffindor, a choice that many fans see as controversial, but we'll talk more about that later in the video. Peter was a very unremarkable student. Madame Rosmerta, the landlady of the 3 Broomsticks in Hogsmeade, called him a fat little boy who was always tagging around after them meaning James and Sirius. Even the teachers like Professor McGonagall saw how much Peter looked up to James, Sirius, and even Remus. McGonagall saying that he hero worshipped them. This is the beginning of a pattern that we'll see throughout Pettigrew's story. He always finds people who are stronger than him and who can protect him. Potter, Black, and Lupin were some of the smartest, most popular students in the school, so they fit that bill well. Professor McGonagall said that she was sharp with Peter at times, most likely because of his poor performance in her class. In fact, she later called him a stupid, foolish boy and added that he was hopeless at dueling. Nevertheless, Peter was happy at school with his 3 friends. Peter, James, and Sirius eventually noticed that Remus would disappear monthly. This made James and Sirius think that Remus was a werewolf, and Wormtail just agreed with them because he would not have put that together on his own. After loads of excuses from Remus, he finally admitted to them that he was indeed a werewolf. Instead of abandoning Remus, Peter and the other 2 decided to help him, and they did this by choosing to become a legal animagi. That way, they could be with him during his transformations. This took them 3 years to pull off, however, because it was a tough process. And Sirius and James had to practically carry Wormtail through this process because he didn't stand a chance in completing it without them. Peter had to keep a mandrake leaf in his mouth for an entire month from full moon to full moon, find a small crystal vial that he put the leaf in when the month ended. Then he had to get a silver teaspoon of dew from a place that neither sunlight nor human feet had touched, which they would have had to find on the Hogwarts grounds. And they would have to add the chrysalis of a death head hawk moth to the crystal vial as well. Peter then left that mixture in a quiet, dark place until the next electrical storm, and in that time, he couldn't even look at the mixture, otherwise it was ruined. And it got even harder, because while waiting for the transfiguration to begin, he had to place his wand tip over his heart every sunrise and sundown and speak a certain animagi incantation. After some time of doing this, Peter eventually started to feel a second heartbeat. When that electrical storm finally hit, Peter, Sirius, and James went back to the potion they had made earlier, which was now a blood red potion, and they put their wand tip over their heart as they had been doing every sunrise and sunset, and said the animagus incantation as they drank the potion. Peter then felt a fiery pain and an intense second heartbeat. And this next part was hard for Peter because he had to show no sign of fear when the animal he would soon turn into appeared in his head. He managed to do this as he saw the picture of a rat in his head, and when he transformed into this rat, it was done. Peter could now turn into a rat at will. Your animagus form is sometimes based on who you are as a person, and it's fitting that Peter's form was a rat, which we'll touch on later. Meanwhile, James became a stag and Sirius became a black dog. They were technically illegal animagi because they didn't register with the Ministry of Magic, as all animagi are supposed to do, and this will be important later. With their new forms, they gave each other nicknames. Peter was Wormtail, inspired by the tail his rat form had. Then James was Prongs, Sirius was Padfoot, and Lupin was Moony. They then dubbed their friend group the Marauders. Now in their 5th year, at every full moon, Peter, Sirius, and James would sneak out at night and make their way to the Whomping Willow. Peter, being the smallest, slipped beneath the tree's attacking branches, and he touched the knot that froze the tree. They would then go down the tunnel to the Shrieking Shack where Lupin was housed, and they would live out some of the most fun memories they ever had at Hogwarts. After a few months, they began to leave the Shrieking Shack and roam the school grounds and the village of Hogsmeade, which allowed them to learn the school better than perhaps anyone, finding every nook and cranny, including many secret tunnels other than the Whomping Willow one. They decided to put all of this knowledge to use and created the Marauders map, which outlined every single part of the castle and the neighboring village. They signed it with each of their nicknames and added a password to it, which was, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," and even added enchantments that insulted people who tried to open it without using the password they made. One day when Snape tried to open it, the map read out, Mr. Wormtail bids Professor Snape good day and advises him to wash his hair, the slime ball. That's actually pretty hilarious. At the end of their 5th year, Peter took his OWLs, and while taking them, he was incredibly anxious, chewing his fingernails, staring hard at his paper, and scuffing the ground with his toes. Every now and again, he would also glance at his neighbor's paper, hoping to copy off of them. Following the test, he joined his 3 friends as they made their way to the grounds, and as they went, they joked about one of the questions: give 5 signs that identify the werewolf. And they all joked and laughed about it. However, Wormtail did not, saying that he didn't think he got all 5. This made James say, "How thick are you, Wormtail? You run round with a werewolf once a month." When they sat under a tree on the grounds, James started playing with a golden snitch, and when he allowed it to fly away and then snatch it, Peter watched him in awe. Every time James pulled off a very difficult catch, Wormtail gasped and applauded. That is, until Sirius asked James to put it away before Wormtail wet himself with excitement, and this made Peter turn slightly pink. Sirius is a savage for saying that, but it's hilarious. When James and Sirius decided to go bully and torment Snape, Wormtail stayed seated under the tree with Lupin, but he looked from Sirius and James to Snape with a look of avid anticipation. When things got more intense and Snape was panting on the ground, Wormtail got to his feet, hungrily edging around Lupin to get a clearer view. He also laughed when Sirius made a joke about Snape's greasy hair and nose. Then when James flipped Snape upside down to show his graying underwear, Wormtail burst out with laughter. In their 7th year, Peter became friends with Lily Evans when she started dating James, and their group of now 5 all graduated at the end of the year. All 5 of them then joined the Order of the Phoenix, a group that Dumbledore put together to help fight Voldemort and his Death Eaters, who were at the height of their power at this point. When Lily and James got married shortly after graduating, Peter attended their wedding. Peter was also present in their lives when Lily gave birth to their son, Harry James Potter. Peter was part of a picture that was taken of the Order of the Phoenix, and he actually sat in between Lily and James. When Dumbledore became aware of a prophecy that could be about their 1-year-old son Harry, the Potters went into hiding and they employed a secret keeper. With this, whoever their secret keeper was, nobody could find them unless said secret keeper told that person. Originally, James and Lily opted to make Sirius take on this role, but Sirius said that that was too obvious and told them that they should make Wormtail the secret keeper because nobody would see that coming. When you think about it, Peter was probably so excited to be picked for this because he was rarely picked for anything. Peter was hidden by the Order as well, so that it would be difficult for anyone to find him. But one day, Peter decided to leave that hiding spot to make a visit to Lord Voldemort himself, the very man that he had sworn to fight when he joined the Order of the Phoenix. Peter told him exactly where Lily and James were hiding, which only he himself could do as Secret Keeper. The animagus form that had been assigned to him finally made sense. He really was a rat who ratted out his best friends. He had realized that James, Sirius, and Remus were no longer the strongest people he could hide behind. As Voldemort grew stronger and got more influence, Peter realized that Lord Voldemort was the person who could give him the most protection. Sirius later said, "You always liked big friends who'd looked after you, didn't you? It used to be us, me and Remus and James. It must have been the finest moment of your miserable life, telling Voldemort you could hand him the Potters." Betraying his friends and swearing his allegiance to the Dark Lord, Voldemort made Wormtail an official Death Eater. He then branded Wormtail with the dark mark on his forearm, the mark that all Death Eaters received. After ratting Lily and James out to his new master, Peter had the audacity to go and visit them at their home in Godric's Hollow. Lily noticed that he seemed down, which obviously was because he knew that this might be the last time he ever saw them. However, Lily thought that he was down because the McKinnons had died recently while fighting for the Order. She never expected the real reason. When Voldemort followed Wormtail's instructions to find Lily and James, the Dark Lord found them, killed James, then Lily, and tried to kill Harry, but this didn't work. Harry survived, and Voldemort vanished. Now you can imagine how bad this looked for Peter. Not only had he betrayed the Order of the Phoenix, but the man who he had chosen to align himself with instead was now gone, disappearing because of the information that he gave him. This meant that not only every member of the Order would come after him, but the Death Eaters would as well. They would of course think that the Double Crosser had double crossed them. However, despite being so abysmal at, well, life, Peter pulled off an incredible feat, which would save him from both sides. When Sirius went to Wormtail's hiding spot and realized he was gone with no sign of a struggle, he went straight to Lily and James's house, only to find them dead. This made him realize that Peter had betrayed them, so he went after him. When they were face to face though, Peter completely flipped the situation in the eyes of those witnessing the event, most of whom were actually muggles. He sobbed, saying, "Lily and James, Sirius, how could you?" Making it seem like Sirius was the secret keeper who had betrayed their friends, rather than him. Peter then pulled out his wand and used a spell that caused an insane explosion, killing 12 muggles and leaving a crater in the middle of the street so deep that it cracked the sewer below. Pathetic and talentless Peter pulling off a spell like this kind of makes you question if he really is as useless as everyone says. Just saying. Peter then had the quick wits to cut off his own finger, leave it there along with his wand and bloody robes, turn into his rat form, and escape. And because he was an illegal animagi, the Ministry had no idea that he could turn into a rat. Wormtail then went on the run, deciding from that point on, he would forever stay a rat, never going back to his human form. This move of his framed Sirius, making it seem like Sirius was the one that caused the blasting spell that killed everyone, and because Peter had just up and disappeared, the Ministry assumed that the explosion destroyed every bit of Peter besides his finger. Cornelius Fudge, who at the time was junior minister in the Department of Magical Catastrophes, said this years later, "I was one of the first on the scene after Black murdered all those people. I will never forget it. I still dream about it sometimes. A crater in the middle of the street, bodies everywhere, muggles screaming, and Black standing there laughing with what was left of Pettigrew in front of him." Peter had pulled off one of the most remarkable framing jobs, possibly in history, which again makes you wonder if he was as dumb as everyone says. Lupin even admitted that this plan was so brilliant. The Ministry labeled Pettigrew a friend of James and Lily, maddened by grief, who went after Black, the man responsible for the Potter's death. And Cornelius Fudge even said, "Pettigrew died a hero's death." And they awarded him Order of Merlin First Class, the most prestigious title you can get in the Wizarding world. Peter's mother, having no idea of the truth, was heartbroken when she found out about the supposed fate of her son. The Ministry arrived at her doorstep and gave her her son's finger in a box, as well as the Order of Merlin award. Though this didn't fix everything, Peter getting this award did help comfort her in some way. Little did she know though, her son was still alive, was a traitor, was a coward, and a son who allowed his mother to grieve unnecessarily. Despicable. Wormtail's plan gets even more impressive though. He knew he needed to be in the know of what was going on in the Wizarding world, just in case there was any news about Voldemort or of Sirius. He obviously needed to know both, because both of them could easily come after him. Sirius for framing him, and Voldemort for giving him information that led to his downfall. So, Wormtail weaseled his way into becoming the pet of a member of the pureblood Weasley family. Picking this family was no accident. The Weasleys were pureblood, but were also blood traders, meaning unlike most other pureblood families, they had no ties to Voldemort or his army. But at the same time, they were fully immersed in the Wizarding world and all of its news, meaning Peter would be in the know as well. He was Percy Weasley's pet when he went off to Hogwarts for his first year, and he named him Scabbers. Peter had an easy life in his rat form, sleeping more often than being awake. He also ate so much that he became very fat, and he felt untouchable by his enemies here. He remained Percy's pet up until the summer before Percy's 5th year because he got an owl to replace him. So, Wormtail or Scabbers was passed down to Percy's younger brother Ron, who adopted him as his pet when he went off for his first year at Hogwarts. One thing that I always think is weird is the fact that Hogwarts very clearly states that the pets you're allowed to bring are an owl, a cat, or a toad, but they never mention a rat, so I don't know why the Weasleys were allowed to do that. Something that probably shocked Wormtail was that Ron immediately became friends with a boy named Harry Potter, the son of James and Lily, the friends that he had betrayed, and the boy who Wormtail had basically told Voldemort to go and kill a decade earlier. However, he wasn't too frazzled by this because he just slept on the train. Even when Ron tried to use a spell on him, the goal being to turn this stupid fat rat yellow, he just stayed asleep. And on that same train ride, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle tried to steal Ron and Harry's food, and when they reached for it, Wormtail bit Goyle's finger, and he did not let go. Goyle swung him around, howling in pain, and when Wormtail finally flew off, he smashed into the window, and Ron thought he was knocked out, but Wormtail had actually just decided to go back to sleep like nothing happened. Wild. Wormtail continued to live a leisurely life, sleeping in Ron's bed, snoozing in his pocket, or napping in patches of sun in the Gryffindor dormitory. So basically, he just continued to do nothing but sleep. He went through a few wild experiences though, like being in the flying car when the Whomping Willow attacked. He also went to Egypt with all of the Weasleys, and was even in a picture with the family sitting on Ron's shoulder, which made it to the Daily Prophet. And this would prove to be a costly mistake on Wormtail's part. His missing toe was quite obvious, and was seen by the last man he would have wanted to see this, Sirius Black. Shortly after that picture was printed, Wormtail found out that Sirius had become the first wizard to escape Azkaban, and he knew he was in danger. Also, I will add that technically Sirius was not the first person to escape Azkaban, he was just the first known escapee at the time. Barty Crouch Jr. had been smuggled out by his parents and switched places with his mother. But anyway, Peter lost a ton of weight upon discovering the escape of his old friend, and he got more and more sickly as time went on. Ron noticed how bad he looked, so he took him to a pet shop in Diagon Alley. There was an interesting moment here, as Ron placed him next to a cage full of real rats, and the real rats all stopped what they were doing and ran over to get a better look at Wormtail, realizing that he was not one of them. The shop owner examined him and asked what powers he had, considering the fact that he had lived for so long, which an ordinary rat would not be able to do. But Ron had no answer because Wormtail had never revealed any of his powers. When the shop owner pointed out his missing toe, which was actually his missing finger, she said that Scabbers had been through a lot and offered to sell Ron a new rat. Ron said no though, and instead bought Rat Tonic, hoping it would help him. In that shop, Wormtail would then meet Crookshanks, a cat that was half Kneazle, meaning it was very intelligent compared to most other animals. Crookshanks immediately knew what Scabbers was, and he tried to attack him in the pet store. Wormtail ran for it, and when Ron found him 10 minutes later, Wormtail thought he was in the clear, but Pettigrew was then horrified when he discovered that Hermione had bought Crookshanks, meaning he would be around all the time. Crookshanks would make several attempts to take Wormtail out, but all of them unfortunately failed. With the stress of Crookshanks trying to kill him, and knowing that Sirius was out there probably hunting him, Wormtail not only lost even more weight, but his fur started to fall out as well. Then, one of the scariest nights for Wormtail was when Sirius himself was standing right over him with a knife. With the help of Crookshanks, he had gotten the password to the Gryffindor Tower, and he made his way to their bedroom and attempted to stab Wormtail, who was sleeping in bed with Ron. Unfortunately, Ron's scream made Sirius have to flee before getting the chance to get to Pettigrew. Wormtail realized that the only thing he could do was do the same thing that he had done over a decade ago, fake his death and frame somebody else. It worked before, so why not try it again? So he cut himself, left a patch of blood on Ron's sheets, and put some of Crookshanks' hair next to it. Ron made a huge scene, blaming Crookshanks for his death, meaning his plan worked. However, he was not as successful at hiding this time around. Hermione ended up finding him in Hagrid's hut and gave him to Ron. At this point, Wormtail looked dreadful. He was thinner than ever and had lost so much hair that he had bald spots. After being found, Wormtail did all he could to escape from Ron, squeaking, twisting, flailing, and even biting Ron's hand. Then when Crookshanks appeared, he finally slipped away from Ron's grasp and ran for it. When Ron finally caught up to him, Sirius in his dog form showed up and carried both him and Scabbers away through the Whomping Willow tunnel that led to the Shrieking Shack. Then, not only was he caught by one of his former friends, but by Lupin as well, who had seen Peter on the Marauders map. Then a third person from their school days arrived, Severus Snape. Wormtail probably thought that he was saved, as Snape threatened to take his two friends down. But the trio ensured that that went out the window when all three of them shot a spell at Snape simultaneously, knocking him out. In the movie, it was just Harry that did this, but in the book, it was all three of them, and this video is based on the books, not the films. When Sirius pointed out the missing toe on Scabbers, everything clicked for all of those in the room. Ron finally agreed to hand Scabbers over, and when Sirius and Lupin shot a spell at him, Wormtail turned into his human form for the first time in 12 years. He tried to plead with Lupin, alleging that Sirius had tried to kill him, and that Sirius had killed Lily and James, but Lupin was not having it. Hermione spoke up though, and asked if Pettigrew had actually been on Voldemort's side, why hadn't he killed Harry already? He was with him non-stop for the last 3 years, even sleeping in the same room as him. However, Sirius answered this right away. I'll tell you why. Because you never did anything for anyone unless you could see what was in it for you. Voldemort's been in hiding for 15 years. They say he's half dead. You were not about to commit a murder right under Albus Dumbledore's nose for a wreck of a wizard who lost all of his powers, were you? You'd want to be quite sure that he was the biggest bully in the playground before you went back to him, wouldn't you? And Sirius later said, I realized he was at Hogwarts with Harry, perfectly positioned to act if one hint reached his ears that the dark side was gathering strength again, ready to strike at the moment he could be sure of allies and to deliver the last Potter to them. If he gave them Harry, who dare say he'd betrayed Lord Voldemort? He'd be welcomed back with honors. When Harry nodded to Sirius, indicating that he believed him, Peter saw this as his own death sentence, and he fell to his knees, begging first Sirius, then Remus, then to Ron, saying he had been a good pet, then to Hermione, and finally to Harry, saying that he looked just like his father. This sent Sirius over the edge. How dare you speak to Harry? How dare you face him? How dare you talk about James in front of him? Sirius and Lupin raised their wands together. You should have realized if Voldemort didn't kill you, we would. Goodbye, Peter. However, Harry stopped them at the last second, and Pettigrew thanked him, saying it was more than he deserved. But Harry said he was not doing it for him. He was doing it so they could free Sirius, and said he was also doing it for his father, because James would not have wanted his 2 best friends to become killers. He then added that Wormtail deserved to be locked up in Azkaban. They tied him up, gagged him, and chained one of his arms to Lupin and the other to Ron. As they began to walk to the castle, Sirius and Lupin told him that if he transformed, they would kill him on the spot, which they got Harry's permission to do. But everything went wrong when Lupin transformed into his werewolf form. Lupin broke free of the chains, Pettigrew grabbed Lupin's wand, and he stunned Ron, making Ron lay motionless on the ground. He then did the same to Crookshanks when he tried to go after him, but Harry disarmed him, yelling at him to stay where he was. However, it was too late. Peter had transformed into his rat form and escaped in the chaos. Now, 2 things that we have to talk about. First is the fact that Harry spared Pettigrew's life, and this created what's called a life debt. Dumbledore later said, Pettigrew owes you his life. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, it creates a certain bond between them, and I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants his servant in the debt of Harry Potter. And the second thing we have to go over is the prophecy that was foretold the night that Pettigrew escaped. Sybil Trelawney, the same person who had foretold the prophecy linked to Harry and Voldemort, foretold another prophecy. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. The Dark Lord will rise again with his servant's aid, greater and more terrible than ever he was. Tonight before midnight, the servant will set out to rejoin his master. This of course refers to Wormtail going off to find Voldemort, which is exactly what Pettigrew did after escaping from Hogwarts. He first located Voldemort's wand, and going into deeper lore past the books, we find out how Wormtail located it. The lore says that he actually went to the ruins of the Potter's home in Godric's Hollow, found his master's wand, and hid it in a place where nobody but him could find it. This is crazy because it would mean that Peter would have just narrowly missed running into both Hagrid and Sirius, both of whom went to the ruins as well. The movies also had Snape go there, but that's another thing that the movies added that wasn't in the books. And again, this video is based on the novels, not the films. But anyway, Wormtail went back to the place where he had hidden Voldemort's wand, and he then used this wand as his own, because he had obviously lost his wand when he framed Sirius and escaped from the scene where the 12 Muggles died. Pettigrew made his way to the Albanian forest where Voldemort had been rumored to be for years. He communicated with other rats while in his animagus form, and they told him that there was a place deep in the Albanian forest that they avoided, where small animals like themselves had met their deaths by a dark shadow that possessed them. It was harder to find his master than Pettigrew thought though. He was desperately hungry one night, and he foolishly risked stopping at an inn while in his human form to get something to eat. There he ran into a witch named Bertha Jorkins, who just so happened to work for the Ministry of Magic. This should have been it for Peter, but as Voldemort later said, he displayed a presence of mind that most would never expect from him. He convinced Bertha to go on a nighttime stroll with him, which I have to say is wild of Bertha. Most women would not go on a nighttime stroll with a man like Peter Pettigrew. On their walk, Wormtail waited until they were far enough away from the inn, and he overpowered her. Not long after that, he finally succeeded in finding Voldemort, bringing with him Bertha Jorkins. Voldemort stated that Bertha Jorkins, who might have ruined all, proved instead to be a gift beyond his wildest dreams. Wormtail gave him his wand, and Voldemort was able to torture her to get loads of information. That the Triwizard Tournament was taking place that year, that Alistair Mad-Eye Moody would be teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts, and all about the Quidditch World Cup and the security precautions the Ministry was taking. Bertha also told him that Barty Crouch Jr., a Death Eater who had gone to Azkaban for helping torture the Longbottoms into madness, did not in fact die in Azkaban like everyone thought. As I mentioned earlier, Barty Crouch Jr. was actually the first person to escape Azkaban before Sirius, with the help of his parents, his mother switching places with him. After getting all of this information, Voldemort had Wormtail dispose of her, as she was as good as dead, her mind and body damaged beyond repair. I assume he just dumped her somewhere knowing that she wouldn't live much longer. With this information, Voldemort formed a plan that would allow him to return to a full human body. Voldemort knew that Wormtail did not return to him out of loyalty, but out of fear for his old friends, and he thought about possessing Peter much like he did with Quirrell a few years earlier, but he realized that with Wormtail being thought dead by the wizarding world, possessing his body would attract too much attention, not to mention that Peter's body was already sickly and weak. However, Voldemort realized that he was the able-bodied servant that he needed. He later said, "Poor wizard though he is, Wormtail was able to follow the instructions I gave him, which would return me to a rudimentary, weak body of my own." Pettigrew followed Voldemort's instructions, which involved using a few spells that Voldemort himself had invented, as well as concocting a potion that involved snake venom and unicorn blood. I assume that this meant that Peter would have to go out and find a unicorn, slaughter it, and take its blood. Meanwhile, Voldemort befriended a snake named Nagini, whose venom he would use and who he adopted as a pet and later used to make a Horcrux. Also, knowing that Nagini was a former human makes her arc in the 7 books even more wild. I really wish they had finished the Fantastic Beasts film solely so we could find out how this sweet woman became a bloodthirsty snake. Also yes, the Fantastic Beasts movies are canon, unlike the 8 films, because they are the original source material written by J.K. Rowling. It gets so confusing, she should have just written the Fantastic Beasts saga as another book series. And honestly, if she had, it probably would have been finished. But anyway, Voldemort eventually gathered enough strength to be able to move, and they left the Albanian forest. They jumped from place to place, Wormtail ensuring that Voldemort had the potion he needed to stay in his temporary body. Wormtail also informed his master about everything his former army members were up to, including Lucius, who had pleaded innocence, Crabbe and Goyle, who had done the same, McNair, who he told Voldemort worked for the Ministry as an executioner for dangerous creatures, Bellatrix, Rodolphus, and Sebastian, who were in Azkaban for attempting to find him, and so on. Eventually, they made their way to the Riddle Mansion, which was where Voldemort's father and grandparents had lived, and where he had murdered all 3 of them a few decades ago. One night, Wormtail asked his master how long they would stay there, and Voldemort told him a week or longer. He said that it was comfortable there, and that it would be foolish to act before the Quidditch World Cup was over. They then discussed the plan that Voldemort had formed with the information they had gotten from Bertha Jorkins, which involved getting the blood of an enemy. Voldemort wanted Harry Potter's blood specifically, but Pettigrew asked if it really had to be Potter's blood. Voldemort responded to this statement, saying, "I see." Wormtail then quickly added, "My lord, I do not say this out of concern for the boy. The boy is nothing to me, nothing at all." He added that the process of getting Voldemort a body could be done faster if they used another wizard. He offered to leave to go and subdue another wizard and bring him back to Voldemort, but this offer did not have the effect that Wormtail thought it would. Voldemort responded, saying, "I wonder, perhaps the task of nursing me has become wearisome for you, Wormtail. Could the suggestion of abandoning the plan be nothing more than an attempt to desert me? Wormtail desperately told Voldemort that he did not wish to leave him, but Voldemort knew he was lying and said so. Do not lie to me. I can always tell, Wormtail. You are regretting that you ever returned to me. I revolt you. I see you flinch when you look at me, feel you shudder when you touch me. Your devotion is nothing more than cowardice. You would not be here if you had anywhere else to go. Voldemort said that he needed the boy, and that was final, and if Wormtail questioned this, he would feel the full extent of Lord Voldemort's wrath. Wormtail then got jealous when Voldemort called Barty Crouch Jr. a faithful servant, voicing that he was faithful as well. Voldemort validated this and said he would give Wormtail the chance to be just as useful. He told him that he would have a job that many of his followers would give their right hand for, but he said that he did not want to spoil the surprise. Nagini then slithered in, and when she told him that the Muggle caretaker Frank Bryce was outside listening, he had Pettigrew invite him in. Wormtail did so, and when the man wanted to see Voldemort face to face, Peter turned the chair around. Frank was horrified to see the state Voldemort was in, but this didn't last long because Voldemort killed him shortly after. After the Quidditch World Cup, Voldemort had Pettigrew bring him to Barty Crouch Jr. Wormtail carried him to the Crouch home, and when they arrived at midnight, Barty Crouch Sr. opened the door. They immediately put the Imperius Curse on him, and Barty Jr. was delighted to join Wormtail and their master. Wormtail and Barty Jr. prepared Polyjuice Potion, and together they broke into Alistair Mad-Eye Moody's home. The ex-Auror put up a good fight, but Wormtail and Crouch Jr. managed to subdue him just in time. They forced him into a compartment of his own magical trunk, took his hair, and added it to the potion. Wormtail then stayed hidden in the house while Barty Jr., now looking like Moody, talked to Arthur Weasley, making Arthur believe that he was in fact the real Mad-Eye. Eventually, Crouch Sr. began to fight Voldemort's Imperius Curse, so Voldemort sent Wormtail to watch after him. Wormtail had him send letters to the Ministry and didn't let him leave the house. However, one day, Pettigrew messed up big time when he allowed Crouch Sr. to escape. Luckily for him, Barty Jr. fixed his mistake, killing his father when he reached the Hogwarts grounds. Wormtail was ordered to visit Voldemort afterwards, and the Dark Lord told him that he was in luck because his blunder did not ruin everything. Voldemort then informed Nagini that she would not get to eat Pettigrew after all. But Voldemort still punished Peter. He used the Cruciatus or the Torture Curse on him. Wormtail felt as though every nerve in his body was on fire until the Dark Lord finally released him. Shortly after that, Voldemort told Wormtail the task he was to fulfill for him, the task that he said most of his followers would give their right hand for. Little did Wormtail know, this was literal. His task was to cut off his right hand as sacrifice to give Voldemort a full body. Their plan was set into motion several months later. Just as planned, Harry touched the Triwizard Cup and was taken to the Riddle Graveyard. However, there was another boy there which was not part of the plan. Voldemort told the hooded Wormtail to kill the spare, and he did as instructed, using the killing curse on Cedric Diggory. Wormtail had committed his first ever murder. He then tied Harry to the Riddle's gravestone, and when Harry struggled, Pettigrew slapped him across the face with the hand that had a missing finger, making Harry realize who was beneath the hood. He gagged Harry and followed Voldemort's orders. A giant cauldron came to life, and Wormtail carried the body of Voldemort toward it, revulsion on his face. When he dropped the body in, he added a bone of Voldemort's father. Then, as planned, he cut his hand off and dropped it into the cauldron. As he cut his hand off, he said, "Flesh of the servant, willingly given, you will revive your master." Wormtail let out the worst scream imaginable, but he moved on to the next step, which was cutting Harry's arm and taking his blood. This was the final step that made Voldemort return to a full and complete body. Wormtail, his job done, dropped to his knees beside the cauldron, then slumped sideways and lay on the ground, cradling the bleeding stump on his arm, gasping and sobbing. His newly formed master then ordered Wormtail to put his robe on, which in the pocket housed the wand that Wormtail had retrieved for him. This meant that Wormtail was now wandless, which we'll touch on later. Voldemort used the wand to shoot a spell at Peter, making him be thrown off the ground and slam into the headstone where Harry was tied. He lay there, crumpled and crying. After a minute, Wormtail said to his master that he had promised to fix his hand, and Voldemort told him to hold out his arm. Peter thought that he was fulfilling his promise, but the Dark Lord told him to hold out the other arm, the arm that still had a hand attached to it, so that Voldemort could use his dark mark to call the other Death Eaters to him. Wormtail obeyed, and he witnessed most of the Death Eaters return, all forming a circle, which Wormtail was not welcomed into. Eventually though, Voldemort ended up praising Wormtail for returning to him, acknowledging that he did something none of the other Death Eaters were able to do. But he also called Wormtail a coward, and said that he deserved the pain he was in. He voiced that Wormtail helped him though, and in return, he gave Peter a silver hand to replace the one he had cut off. Wormtail told him that it was beautiful, thanked his master profusely, and kissed the hem of his robes. Voldemort then said, "May your loyalty never waver again, Wormtail." Wormtail then stood up and took his place in the circle with the other Death Eaters, staring at his powerful new hand, his face still shining with tears. After Voldemort gave the Death Eaters the explanation of his return, he ordered Wormtail to untie Harry and give him his wand back. As he did so, Wormtail did not have the stomach to look Harry in the eyes, knowing that Harry had saved his life just 1 year earlier. Voldemort and Harry then dueled, and Peter was probably shocked and very uncomfortable when James and Lily themselves appeared out of Voldemort's wand due to Priori Incantatem. The very friends he had betrayed were now feet from him, but they didn't pay Peter any attention. They were focusing on their son, and they were able to help Harry escape the graveyard. Wormtail then witnessed Voldemort's fury that the plan they had been conceiving for the last year was ruined. Wormtail did not do much following Voldemort's return, as he was shunned aside for those that the Dark Lord deemed his real Death Eaters. It became clear that Wormtail had simply been someone who Voldemort used when he needed him. Eventually though, Pettigrew was assigned to move in with Severus Snape and Spinner's End, and he was to assist him with anything he needed. One day, Narcissa Malfoy and Bellatrix Lestrange arrived at the house. When Narcissa asked if they were alone, Snape told her that they were, unless they counted Wormtail, but said, "Well, Wormtail's here, but we're not counting vermin, are we?" Snape then opened a hidden door, which revealed Pettigrew listening to their conversation. Snape told the sisters that Wormtail would get them drinks if they would like it, and then told Peter that he would return to his bedroom after. This made Peter wince, as he said, "I am not your servant." When Snape reminded him why Voldemort assigned him there, Pettigrew said that he was there to assist him, but not to make him drinks and clean his house. This made Snape tell him that he didn't know Wormtail was craving more dangerous assignments, and that he could easily arrange this by speaking with the Dark Lord. Wormtail responded saying that he could speak to their master himself, which Snape said snidely, "Of course you can, but in the meantime, bring us drinks." Wormtail hesitated for a moment, looking as though he might argue, but then he did as he was asked. He dropped the tray of drinks, and when he left, he slammed the door behind him. Later, Wormtail was reassigned to be at Malfoy Manor after Garrick Ollivander, the wand maker, was captured. Pettigrew's job was to watch over Ollivander in the cellar of the manor. Ollivander was forced to make Peter a new wand because he had been wandless for the last 2 years ever since he gave Voldemort his wand back upon his return. The manor soon became the headquarters for Voldemort's operations, and more Death Eaters would come in and out, none of them acknowledging Peter. Later, Wormtail was asked to watch over another prisoner, which was Charity Burbage, the Muggle Studies teacher at Hogwarts. Eventually, there was a massive meeting in the manor with all of the Death Eaters, and Wormtail's prisoner Burbage was taken out and dangled over the table where the meeting took place. Wormtail took his seat at the table, but when Ollivander made a noise in the cellar during the meeting, Voldemort got angry with him for not keeping the prisoner quiet. This made Wormtail get up from the table and go quiet Ollivander down. He did not have to watch over Burbage anymore because Voldemort killed her and fed her to Nagini. However, more prisoners were added for Wormtail to watch over the next few months, including Luna Lovegood, the Goblin Griphook, and Dean Thomas. And then, the most important prisoners Wormtail would ever have to guard arrived: Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. Dobby the House Elf showed up in the cell, however, and he freed 3 of the prisoners on Wormtail's watch, taking Luna, Dean, and Ollivander. When they heard the disapparating noise from upstairs, Lucius Malfoy ordered Pettigrew to go down and check what the noise was. When Wormtail went down there, he ordered everyone to stand away from the door as he came in. Harry and Ron were hiding on either side of the door, and when Wormtail entered, he initially thought that every single one of his prisoners had escaped on his watch. Then Ron and Harry tackled him. Ron seized his wand arm and forced it upward, and Harry slapped a hand to his mouth, muffling Wormtail's voice. Wormtail's silver hand then grabbed Harry by the throat, and he began to strangle him. Harry looked him in the eyes, barely able to speak, and said, "You're going to kill me? After I saved your life? You owe me, Wormtail." These words changed everything, and that life debt proved to be fatal for Peter. He started to let go of Harry's throat, and his small, watery eyes widened with fear and surprise. When Peter had hesitated to kill Harry, that brief moment of mercy caused his silver hand to turn on him. When Voldemort had given him the silver hand, he had said, "May your loyalty never waver again, Wormtail." But in that moment, when he started to let go of Harry, his loyalty wavered, and the hand that his master had given him moved to his own throat, and he began to strangle himself with the powerful silver hand. Harry seeing this, he attempted to save Wormtail's life for a second time. Ron and Harry tried to pull the crushing metal fingers from around Wormtail's throat, but it was no use. Pettigrew was turning blue. Ron tried to shoot a spell to release it, but it didn't work. Pettigrew dropped to his knees, and Wormtail's eyes rolled upward in his purple face. He gave a last twitch, and then he was still. It's fitting that this was how Peter Pettigrew died. His loyalty, or lack thereof, was always going to be his downfall. Throughout his life, he shifted allegiances whenever fear or self-interest demanded it. It's easy to dismiss Peter as nothing more than an unfaithful rat who deserved his fate. But Dumbledore's insight complicates that picture, and you understood Wormtail too. You knew there was a bit of regret there somewhere. This sliver of remorse is huge. It shows us that a part of him never fully severed his allegiance to James, Sirius, and Remus. That buried loyalty surfaced in his final moment. Peter once again betrayed someone, but this time he did it knowing that there was nothing in it for him. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Loosening his grip on Harry's throat was the only truly courageous act of Peter's life. It cost him everything, but it also revealed the faint ember of bravery that the Sorting Hat must have sensed when it sorted him into Gryffindor, something that everybody questioned all his life. As it turns out, Pettigrew died acting like a true and brave Gryffindor. And that's the entire life of Peter Pettigrew. If you enjoyed this, I have loads of other cool Harry Potter videos on this channel, like this one where I go over the most underrated characters in the Harry Potter series, or this one where I theorize on what would have happened if Ginny went on the Horcrux hunt with the trio in the Deathly Hallows. That's all I have for you guys in this video though. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.